Hello, this is the third video in a series for using Master Server Toolkit. This is going to cover deploying to a Windows server. Now, um, with Master Server Toolkit, there's a lot of documentation just running it on your local machine, but there seems to be some questions that newcomers have to how do we get this running on a server. So for that, I'm going to demonstrate how you might set up a Windows server and deploy to it and use it. And now this is probably not the best way to do it, but this is at least setting you up a development environment to test with. And then later on, you can figure out for yourself how to harden it, how to make it secure, figure out the best specs it needs to have. This is simply getting Master Server Toolkit on a remote server just to see what that might look like. Okay, so to get started, I'm using Vultr, or however you pronounce it, vultr.com, as the company to host this server. And I'm going to already set up an account, and yes, you'll need to put in credit card information. This stuff is not free. So anyhow, so I'm going to click Deploy New Server. And here I'm going to just try to find the cheapest thing to deploy for Windows. So what that means is, okay, I don't need anything that's $28 a month, 21, whatever. Cloud compute. Uh, that's fine. Now here, I don't really need a whole lot of performance for development, so I'm going to click regular performance. And as you can see, the price per month is updated down here based on the options you select. But yeah, regular performance is fine. Now for server location, since I'm in Central Time in the United States, I'm going to select a server with the same time zone just to make it easier if I'm looking at logs and it's the same time. I don't have to do any mental calculations. Um, next, server image. Now, I'm not exactly sure what I used last time, if it's Windows Core Standard or Windows Standard. I'm just going to use Windows Standard here, and then select 2022 for 64-bit. Now, after that, we have the choice for the server size. And it looks like here, well, let's see. What's our cheapest? It looks like our cheapest is going to be the 55 gigabyte, so we'll leave it there. Auto backups, well, this is development. I don't need auto backups. And here they're going to warn me. And I'll confirm, yes, who cares about auto backups? Now, for additional features, enable IPv6. I haven't used that. I don't think I need it, so I'm going to uncheck it. And now for the server host name, we can just name it. I'm going to name it MST Demo 1 Win. How about that? And then I will click Deploy Now. I'm going to let this spin. It will take a little while, and I will come back to it. Now we have a running server to use, so let's check it out. Okay. Okay, we have a warning here. It says, please note your server may still be finishing and installing, booting up during the first few minutes of activation. If the server does not ping, you can view the console to monitor progress. So let's see if we can ping it. So So let's see, our IP address that's assigned is 66.42.125.93. Okay, so it's still getting set up since our pinging is timing out, so we'll wait a little bit longer. Well, it does say that we can view the console to monitor progress, so let's see what that looks like. Okay, here's the server console. I will just sit right here and let it do its thing. Okay, it looks like we might have something. I'm going to try pinging it again. Okay, we have a ping. Great. So the next thing we probably want to do is update the builds that we have with the IP address of our server. Now, our server IP address is listed right here. I'll copy it and I will bring up the builds that I have available. So let's see. Okay, so what we're going to want to do is deploy our room server and our room executable and our master and spawner executable. So, but before we actually deploy these and copy these artifacts over to the server, we need to update the configuration. So, and that happens in the application config file. So I'm going to open this with Notepad++. And now what we have here is the master IP and the room IP. So since the master and the room executables will both be running on the same server, I'm just going to use the same server IP for both. Okay. Now this path, this is based on my local development environment. I could change this to be whatever I have on the server, or I could try to make the server have the same path, so that way I don't have to change things. So I'm thinking I'm going to go ahead and do that. Just put the same structure out there. So I think what we need to do now that we have this configured for the master and spawner, we need to also configure the room configuration. And again, the room configuration, we need to update the IP address for the master and room. And lastly, I think we also, now that I think of it, we need to update the client that we're going to use to connect to this remote server. So we're going to open up the same app config except under the client folder. All right. Okay, so now put we've put this new server IP just everywhere we could, right? So now we should be ready to copy these build artifacts up to the server. Now, there's a couple different ways you can do that to copy assets to a remote server. You can use FTP, SFTP, all sorts of things, whatever. However, I'm going to use an application that's kind of been around for ages. It's called WinSCP. Now, WinSCP is a free, whoo, I just had a real big alarm or big notification sound ring in my earphones. So anyway, so this is WinSCP. It's free. You can get it on the Windows Store if you want to support the project. I think it's like $10, but if you download it directly from the website outside of the Windows Store, you can still use it for free. So using WinSCP, we can put our server on the right-hand panel and our local assets on the left-hand panel and copy between them both. So I'm going to use that for this video. So what we need to do is create a connection to this server so that way we can copy files locally to the remote server. Now to do that, what we can do is I'm going to click this new tab, and in doing so it's going to prompt me for putting in a host name and a username and password. So host name, well, that's going to be my IP address. So put that there. Username, well, that's going to be administrator. Password, I'll just copy the password here and then click save. I'm going to go ahead and save password. Yes, not recommended, but this is just development work. Who cares if it gets compromised? I guess I don't. I'm going to destroy this right after this video, but anyway. So I'm going to double click that and let's see if it will connect. I might have misconfigured it, which wouldn't surprise me. Okay, so I misconfigured it, so let's figure out what's going on here. Okay, so I think what I need to do is configure a couple things. So let's start that. I'm going to go to my console and let's log in. And let's see. Shh, that's secret. Okay. Okay, so now that we have this going, checked my notes, I'll need to configure a couple things to get the SFTP working. So the PowerShell integrated script editor. There we go, ISE. Okay, so let's paste. I copied some scripts that I had in my notes. Okay, so that looks like what I have in my notes. And then we have the start service. And you know what? I'm going to comment out these other commands for now. I'm going to clear and just run this first statement individually or on its own. All right, so we've got that one executed successfully. I don't see any red text or yellow text, so oops. You know, why not? I'll save this script as setup as SSH. Why not? Okay, so now the next thing is I want to actually start this service that we just installed. See what happens there. Okay, no red or yellow text, so that's a good sign. And the next thing we want to do is do whatever this is doing, you know. This is a combined copy paste error, right? Um, okay, so we're setting this SSH service to be starting up whenever the server starts up, so that's great. Let's see if that runs successfully. Looks like it did, so good. The next thing we want to do is get net firewall rule. Now, honestly, this is kind of like stuff I copied off Google. I haven't twiddled with this or really figured it out fully, but in my notes, it worked for me. So I'm guessing what this is doing is getting that firewall rule to see what it looks like. And it's displaying different attributes. It looks like we actually have it enabled here. But I'm a little bit concerned. Maybe it set a firewall rule successfully in that first like mess of a command that I executed, but I'm just going to go ahead and set this firewall rule again just to be safe. So, okay, well, can't create the create a file when that file already exists. So, okay, I guess this was successful. I can't do this again because it's gonna I have to delete it, so whatever. I'm going to assume it ran correctly and we're all good to go. And I'm assuming we'll test that by actually trying to connect. So let's try that. I'm going to close that on my server, minimize, and let's see if we can actually connect now. So SFTP port 22, which is what we enabled. So I'm going to double click. Okay, now typically when you connect to a server for the first time using like say this or maybe other applications, it's going to try to establish like some kind of trust, and this is just accepting that okay, hey, yes, this is a trusted host. I know it's legit, so I'm going to go ahead and accept it by clicking yes. And so in the future, it's just going to trust it. So now we're connected. Great. So the next steps is to actually get the build artifacts from my local machine onto my server. So to do that, I'm going to, on my left-hand panel, which is my local, is I'm going to navigate to my builds. And here's my builds for builds app. And what I'm interested in copying over is the master and spawner and the room. So um, since, like I said earlier, um, let me navigate and show it again. The spawner, since the spawner is assuming right now that the room is going to be at this location, well, let's just go ahead and set up that structure. So that way, whenever we build and put this out there, we don't have to like worry about changing it every time. Assuming if you put in any automated build things, you can do that. But right now, I'm just going to try to make it easy on us. So here, I'm going to go to the root and create a new directory called Unity Projects. Click in there. And let's see, what's the next one? I want to make a folder called MST Demo, so I'll do that. And now within that, what's our next step? Builds, okay. We'll create a builds. And what else? App, okay. We're getting somewhere. Okay, so now we have our local on the left, Unity MST Demo 1 builds app, and then our remote on the right. So now what we want to do is just copy these things over. So we'll copy the master and spawner over. Okay, now we want to copy the room. Okay, so now that we have our got a couple windows open to the terminal. Um, here's one of them. So here's our actual terminal. So let's just for the sake of, I don't know, completeness, let's see what we copied. Hey, look, we got a Unity projects, builds, app, master and spawner, room. So the next thing we need to do is to get this master and spawner running. So to do that, just like with any Windows application, you just double click it. Okay, it's running. It's waiting for requests. So now that it's waiting for requests, the next thing we want to do is locally, let's let's see if we can connect to it with our client. And this is on my own local computer. Gonna double click this thing. Uh, we might have an issue here. So the question is, what happened? Right? The connection to the server has been lost. Well, let's take a look. Are we using the correct IP? 66.42.625.93. Oh, I forgot. So we opened up that port 22 for connecting to the server using SFTP. Well, this client is trying to connect. However, it's trying to connect on port 5000. Well, if these servers aren't going to have every single port under the sun enabled for security purposes, right? So we need to start opening up these ports that we want to use. Now, to do that, let's go ahead and navigate to our server. And just to get this, I'm going to go ahead and just close the master and spawner. We don't need that right now. And now that we have that closed, I'm going to open back up my Windows PowerShell ISE. And now I'm going to copy paste some PowerShell scripts that I used earlier that actually worked. So we're going to paste in there and okay. Now I'm not entirely sure if we need to open up both TCP and UDP protocols, but I'm doing it. I figure later down the line I'll know exactly what I need and I'll disable these that I don't. But for right now, to reduce churn, I'm opening up everything that I need that I know of. Which, oops, okay, let me close this out. Which here is, this is for the regular connection to master, but then we have like for some reason we have two different ports for room. We have a room port 7777 and then a default room port 1500. I forget why I added these both, but I think maybe there was some settings somewhere that used one over the other. Maybe later down the line I can clean this up and only use one, but whatever. I'm enabling all of these just to get to the next step in this process, right? So let's go ahead and run this and see what happens. Okay, I didn't see any angry red text. I'm gonna assume everything worked just fine. So I'm gonna close this out and I'm gonna go back and just for just to make it convenient, I will put a shortcut on the desktop. Okay, good. So desktop gets us there. Now I can just go and run the master server and spawner again. All right, so let's keep going and see what happens. Now on the server, I'm running the master server and spawner. On the client, I'm going to, do I have any clients running right now? No. Okay, so double click this client. Okay, connected. That port, opening that one of those ports worked. So I'll sign in. See if I can create a new game. Now, when I create this, click start room, we should see in the server here a new room spawn. Okay, and we do. So that room is spawning on the server. In previous videos, it was spawning on my local machine. So we're going to join that room, and hey, we're in. Just for grins, I'm going to go ahead and start a new client and connect to it. Join that room. Okay, looks like I'm right next to my buddy here. And yeah, okay. I can see the corner there, whatever. But yeah, we have this all rolling. And I think that's good. So I think in the past I might have, I'm going to close these out. So in the past, I think when I deployed a server for Windows, I used this server Windows Core standard rather than standard because I remember when I did that, well, at some point I ran into some problems, and I think it might be because I used Windows Core Standard. Well, and it maybe, right? But in my notes, I ran into a problem and I have no explanation about why I needed to run this PowerShell script, but basically it's installing a new feature on the Windows server for media. Uh, and I'm guessing it's because I used a trimmed down version of Windows that didn't have this feature installed. So if you run into problems, maybe if you're using this, maybe, I don't know, you might have to run this command to get stuff working. But I wish I had a better notes of why I needed to do that, but I'm sharing that here now. Whatever. Good luck.